Okay, hello and welcome to the Waymaker Goals Masterclass. If you're just joining the webinar, fantastic. I'm going to give a moment or two for people to join in, and then I'm going to jump straight in and get through what I think is just a fabulous setup for how you can simply and easily build goals into your organizational culture and structure for performance improvement. And that performance improvement can even be high performance. So as people are joining, and I know many are going to be joining from, different parts of the world, um, I want you to think about your own organization as I talk and what this would mean in terms of your role, your team, and how you're going to approach this as a leader of goal performance. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen and you should be seeing the goals masterclass, how to learn how to design, manage, and lead goal performance. Now, as a technology or a digital firm, we're actually going to spend more time on the thinking and the science of goals today as opposed to the technology. So that's actually a good thing. This is about learning and this is about applying. So what's on our agenda for today? Okay, number one, I'm going to talk about the problem that we need to solve. Number two, I'm going to talk to some of the science of goal setting and perhaps some science you may not have come across. Number three, I'm going to get into setting a goal and how to set a goal. Number two, I'm going to jump into managing goals. And number three, I'm going to get into leading goal performance. So, from a learning outcome perspective, by the end of today, I really hope you know how to do these three things: how to set a goal, how to manage your own and others' goals, and how to lead goal performance. And as I said, I'm going to be focusing on the thinking and the architecture of this. The technology we may touch and get into right at the end, but we can always get into that at any time. And if you've got a user or a free trial running in Waymaker at the moment, you can jump in and play. But it's most important to get our thinking right. So, what is the problem? And by the way, I'm hoping this should only take about 25 to 35 minutes. But if you know me, and I know many people on the call do, I can talk. So I'm going to stay disciplined and I'm going to stay focused because that is my goal. What's the problem? And gosh, I'm sure if you are listening, this is going to resonate to you. But ultimately, the problem with goal setting and performance is that poor performance is simply unmet expectations. So when we think about that as an organization, and you may even and I know I have some of my team in on this call, so they're probably going, yes, Stu, we have some of this too in our own startup. But if you've encountered unclear expectations in your team or in your organization, or a lack of goal owner buy-in, or too many goals are identified and worked on, so we're trying to do everything, not the few, or we infrequently discuss goals and outcomes and results, and in those discussions don't be open and transparent about where we really are, or if the goals we set are not really representative of the real work we do, that may resonate. You set a goal at the start of the year or start of the quarter and everybody feels good about the goal, and then you kind of jump in the next day to your work and you realize a few days later that actually what you do on a day-to-day basis isn't really connected to the goal you've set, or there's no skill or agreed system in your team or organization in how to set a goal. And these are the common problems that result in poor performance that is really unmet expectations. So the big idea here is we need to understand how to get clear expectations, clear and simple engagement on goal development, simplifying goals down to the few, be comfortable in talking about goals and outcomes and sometimes the harsh realities of where we sit against them, ensure that our goals are truly representative of the work that we're working on so we don't have these sort of duality of existence. And we need to actually have a set of skills and a system in how to set a goal. And if we can do that, then we can start to drive forward real performance improvements. But let's start with some science. And as I said at the start of this talk, this webinar, this masterclass, this is actually about learning and some thinking. And I hope that you can take some of this thinking away into your teams. So I'm going to touch on 3 bits of science from 3 different sources and authors and writers that have really shaped how we've put Waymaker together and how we see the world in terms of goals and performance setting. So 3 questions. 1, how does our brain process different kinds of goals? 2, what drives real change in an organization? And 3, how can we design a culture of high performance? I'm going to touch on each of those questions quite quickly. So first up, how does our brain process different kinds of goals? Now, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a doctor of this or that. To be frank, I'm just a guy that loves organizations, goals, performance, and to be quite frank, is kind of selling you some tech to help you do it better. But when I read other authors, writers, experts in this area, I'm going to take you through the human brain, or 4 parts of the human brain that really as humans differentiate us from the animals. See, we as humans, we have 4 neural networks. That's about as sciencey as I want to go, that help us process different kinds of goals. It's actually what significantly differentiates us from the animals. In our brain, we have 4 neural networks, and the first, or one of those neural networks, is the network that handles fear and anxiety. And I'm not even going to talk about the sciencey terms for this, but it's the I'm afraid, or I have fear, or that fear is driving me to do something. And too much of this is a bad thing. Too little of it is a bad thing. But there's a neural network designed to help us understand and recognize the fears around us that can up the anxiety and force us or cause us to want to act to achieve an outcome. Secondly, we have a neural network that in plain language could be described as a go, no go environment. So our brain is trained to go, to do certain actions in order to achieve an outcome, or to no go on actions to achieve a certain outcome. So this is commonly found in, say, fitness. You know, yours truly is not the picture of health. And as a great dad bod, I want to get out there and improve my health. So I'm training my neural network to go and do certain things, go to the gym, work out, exercise, and no go on certain things. Don't eat that cookie. Don't have that piece of cake. So the go, no go neural network is activated for certain goals and outcomes. And thirdly, we have a neural network for planning and thinking. So this is it's unique to humans in our ability to significantly plan ahead, to think through goals or objectives that are both short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And fourthly, we have a neural network that manages the emotionality of goals and outcomes when we achieve something. So what's the point of kind of touching on all of this? Well, the value of these 4 different neural networks is that the best results in humans, because humans are not machines and humans are not core animals. We're species unique. when we are only driven for goals and outcomes through one of those neural networks, our brains are out of balance. As humans, when we're not leveraging all the muscles. And so you might think of it like a guy that goes to the gym and skips leg day and ends up with a big bulky chest and arms but chicken legs. And your brain can end like that. And as leaders, if we don't understand this, then we can accidentally create this kind of behavior in our organizations. You might have felt it for too long as a leader, or yourself, you could be that leader, has used goals or outcomes driven by fear and anxiety. And if you only drive that, what kind of behavior is going to be exhibited in your team? It'll be pure survival instincts. And, we've seen in organizations what happens when people operate on pure survival instincts. In fact, you just got to read some books of old and think through really what happens when base humans operate in that way. It's not pretty. Secondly, if we only ever use push, pull, go, no go, we don't allow people to mature. You might think of leaders who sometimes, and you might have done this yourself, and I have, you treat people like toddlers. Don't do this, do that. And if we don't allow those neural networks to mature in our organizations, we don't allow people to get the right behaviors and the right strength in these environments. I could go on, but the point is, as leaders, the best results in our people happen when we're optimizing all four networks through our goal setting. So it's not unhealthy to be concerned about not generating the cash flow to run your business. That should generate some fear and anxiety. But too much of that without reality check and clear understanding, well, that's going to overbalance how you drive. So key insight is to understand when we're building goals in an organization and designing goals and goal architecture and performance intelligence architecture, we've got to understand that we're humans. And we sometimes forget that. Humans are not machines. If the work we're doing is machine oriented, then systemize it and turn it into a machine. Don't let a human do that. So point number one in the science is optimize and engage all four parts of the human brain. Two, what really drives change in an organization? Now, if you've listened to any of my talks over the months and years I've been running Waymaker, you'll have heard me talk about the Waymaker leadership curve. It's not rocket science, but it is a science. And the simple science of the growth framework is this. We as individuals or organizations want to grow and mature over time to be substantial and significant leaders. And the way to do that is actually to invest in what we call both sides of the leadership curve. So there's an investment in both skills. I know how to do things, or as an organization, we know how to do things, and systems. We can now start to automate or build systems around the things we know. And over time, we layer skills and systems on skills and systems on skills and systems. And over time, we build depth and maturity. And so what happens, either as an individual or as an organization, we can grow into significant and substantial leaders or organizations because of the skills and the systems laid down and built upon. The challenge is, well, what skills and systems matter most at what stage of the journey? And you can jump into some of our organizational or individual diagnostics in Waymaker to explore those. Just look at the leadership curves and you'll see them. But again, these are also unique to individuals and different moments in time. But what I want to touch on here is the science of transformation and the leadership context in relation to goal setting and performance management. And you may have seen this triangle in some of our writings, some of my writings previously. And it's commonly known as a transformation iceberg. It's classic systems thinking. And basically it says this, and this is leading to a very big point that we as leaders need to get if we're going to transform organizations. So on that journey of growth, investing in skills and systems over time, building leadership as an organization or as an individual, we need to understand that if we look at the very top of the transformation triangle, who we are is seen and the activities and what we do are seen. But beneath that, most people don't see that. Our customers don't really see behind that. Perhaps some in the organization see, but the further we go down the triangle, the less seen. So what is this leading to? Well, if we want to build a performance culture and a goals culture, goals need to be activities of what we do. That's pretty evident. But if we're just telling people to set goals and it's just something that we do, then we know that it doesn't matter what kind of behavioral change we're enacting. If it's just something we do and it doesn't go deeper into our transformation psyche, then it doesn't stick. So we know that the things that we do are driven by the patterns and trends and behaviors that we exhibit as individuals or organizations over time. And that those patterns, trends, and behaviors over time are actually influenced in our organizations by the skills we focus on building and the systems that we build, the organizational structures and practices. And behind those things sit the mental models of the organization as driven by the mental models agreed as leaders of organization. That's our view of the world, our view of the market, our assumptions, our principles, our values, our beliefs. And the way we think informs the skills and systems we put in place, which informs the patterns and the trends and the behaviors over time, which informs the culture. So if we want to transform culture, we actually need to ensure we are thinking in the right way. So this is a long sentence, but an important sentence. For substantial and sustainable transformation of performance in any organization, the skill of goal setting and the system of goal management must be embedded as the way to make vision reality within the leadership mindset. Or, as we like to say, be a waymaker. What does that mean? As a leader, we've embedded in ourselves the idea that the way to make vision a reality, it's a mindset. I'm going to make vision a reality. I'm going to change the state of things, either in myself, my organization, or my marketplace, or for my customer. And in order to do that, I've got to build the skill of goal setting, and I've got to establish a system of goal management. And if I do that, then what I can hope to achieve are underlying skills and systems in our organization that influence structures and practices that start to create patterns and trends and behaviors over time, which influences what we do on a daily basis. That's cultural transformation. So as leaders, and I would summarize this as just simply be a waymaker. Now, you're probably saying, okay, got any evidence to back this up? Yes. I love this research study that I came across. It's by a researcher, professor, associate professor, I think Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University in California. And in 2015, Dr. Matthews ran a study when she was studying procrastination. I am an expert procrastinator. You may also relate to that at times. And Dr. Matthews was looking at procrastination both from an individual performance improvement, organizational context, and came across something really interesting. And that was that as all wonderful urban myths do, urban myths are built on what sounds like truth, but actually doesn't exist. And came across this article about the 1953 Yale study of goals. Now, if you want to make up a story, you put a date to it, you put something integrous to it, and you make it sound and feel like the truth. If you've ever played that game Dictionary as a family or with friends, the way you make, which the game is, here's a word and come up with a new definition. You do this kind of thing. You make it sound real. The reality was this study, 1953 Yale study of goals, which said that successful people are those that write down their goals, just never existed. It just didn't exist. And for 40 odd years, it was being used in Fast Company and Forbes and all these other publications as the standard on why you should set goals in a certain way. Now, kind of funny that it didn't exist. Dr. Matthews went, all right, well, let me actually run a study to see if what the urban myth claimed was true or not true. And her research found that documenting, committing, and being held accountable was the key to higher performance. Now, I know that kind of sounds like common sense. You're probably sitting there and go, well, yeah, great. I've given up my morning, my evening, or my coffee break to listen to Stuart talk about common sense. Well, the reality is, I reckon I could walk into almost any organization in the world and you would find that accountability, commitment, and documenting was missing on the things that really matter most. And as we know, the problem is unmet expectations equals poor performance. And if we want to improve that, then we've got to transform that. So what did her study do? Her study found that if you applied the simple practice of writing down goals, having written actions that define success around those goals, committed to a friend or colleague, i.e. shared the reality of what you needed to do to achieve that goal, and then were held accountable to providing progress updates on that goal, then when compared to a group of people that just knew their goal, unwritten but known, then you would achieve a 77% performance improvement. So we talk about that all the time. And in reality, what Dr. Matthews found was that it's not just about knowing your goal. It's not just about knowing, oh, that's my KPI, or that's what I'm accountable for in the business plan in terms of a KPI or a metric. No, it's actually about documenting that. It's about putting real outcomes and actions around that, committing to friends and colleagues what that is and sharing that and being open and transparent, and then being accountable to come together regularly to actually talk about that. Now that actually means that it's more about what you do around the goals than the goal itself. And that's kind of the big idea with Waymaker. As Dr. Matthews said, my study provides empirical evidence for the effectiveness of 3 coaching tools: leader as coach, manager as coach, coach as coach, accountability, commitment, and writing down one's goals. Not rocket science, but it is a science. So let's talk about how to write a goal. And I'm going to fly through this architecture really quickly. The problem in a lot of organizations, and even with ourselves today, is that there is a plethora, an absolute diversity of acronyms and frameworks for goal setting. OKRs, WHOOPs, SMARTs, SMARTers, HARDs, BHAGs, BSQs, OGSMs. And so often there's an assumption that when you join an organization or are working inside an organization, that you just know how to set a goal and that it's kind of like breathing. Oh, goals, KPIs, metrics. Yeah, that's just what we do. The reality is that most organizations haven't stepped back and said, this is actually the goal methodology we're going to put in place. Let's train people on the skill of that. Because this is the goal methodology we're going to put in place, let's put a system around that, and let's commit. And the organizations that do that, as you can see from Dr. Matthews' research, do achieve higher performance. And so one of the challenges first up is to go, all right, well, let's pick a way of doing this. And so I'm going to take you through Waymaker's way. It's pretty simple, and it really brings, I would say, the best of all of these together. And what we're really doing when we're setting goals is we're answering the question, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that, if delivered, shift the needle? When I'm setting a goal, I'm really answering the question, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that, if delivered, shift the needle? I've been asking this question for 10 or 15 years with clients and customers and different work that I do. And, if you ask this question and pause, you ask this question of yourself in your own daily work or life, it really does force you to pause and think, the 1, 2, or 3 things that, if delivered, shift the needle. Because it really forces you to go, well, A, do I know? B, if I know, am I doing it? And C, if I know and I am or are not doing it, am I consistent? And am I doing it with others that I'm leading? The reality is that you can get your role, a business plan, or a strategic plan down into one goal each. And if you can't do that, then it's too complicated. It's not clear enough. It's not simple enough. And so the first challenge I say to you coming out of today's masterclass is step back and go, could my role, forget about all the stuff I do, is my role clear enough to drop back to a single goal? If it's not, talk to your manager, your leader. If it's not for your team, talk to your team. Get it that clear. And I'm going to talk about some techniques to do that shortly. But if you think about the current shift of society today, we are in a transformation from an industrialized world into a different kind of economy. And that's not the purpose of this webinar. I could talk for hours on that. But the reality is, in today's world, I like this phrase: people hire for outcomes and outsource for tasks. So when we're investing in a person, we're really investing in what is that person here to achieve as an outcome, their goal. We're not, if you're hiring somebody, let's say you hire somebody, cool, here's 100K spent on that person. Are you really interested in just the task they do? No, you're really interested in the outcomes, the real outcomes that they're going to bring. So how do we design a goal? There's a plethora of options. Let me break it down into one simple basic step. Goal is made up of a goal name, the what context, the why it matters, the when, the outcomes, which are the measures that tell you if you're successful. And these should always be a currency, a numerical value, or a percent. And ideally, there's some tasks or some actions that lead to the delivery of those outcomes. And those actions, tasks, could be a project or a set of projects or just simply weekly tasks. It really depends on how big the goal and the outcomes are and how diverse they are. So if you're familiar with SMART goals, OKRs, SMARTer goals, then really the goal architecture comes down to these 3 things. What am I trying to achieve? It's the goal name. Why does it really matter now? And what's the time frame for this goal? When do I start? When do I finish? Then I need to define some outcomes, some measures, some metrics, some key results that state, well, if I achieve the goal, how do I know that I'm successful? And those outcomes should be metrics, which means they're always measurable, they're always trackable, and they should only be one of 3 things. It should be a currency. I know we've got people tuning in from Europe and the UK, so euro or pound or dollar, peso. A numerical value, so a number, or a percent. When you've got your success metrics articulated to say, okay, these are what the outcomes will be, then you can kind of think of outcomes like the crosshairs on a sniper rifle or a targeting to go, cool, I know when I'm over the goal, these are the success metrics that tell me I'm achieving this goal. And ideally, there's about 3 to 5, but to be frank, I don't care. I've seen it work with 1 or 2 or 6 or 8. If it's too much more than that, though, I think you're getting a bit unclear. And you should be able to turn your outcomes into milestones or what we call waypoints. And lastly, tasks are the things that you do or need to do. So a goal made up of a name, outcomes, tasks. Now, if you're using Waymaker, you'll be familiar with these things. Here's an example. And we have this hypothetical company that we invented in Waymaker that we use for a lot of our demos. Here's the goal. Achieve market leadership in the electric vehicle industry. So this hypothetical company is called Burke and Wheels Electric Vehicles, BWEV. Their vision is to build an EV that can drive from the bottom of Australia to the top of Australia. Why? Because that was the original adventurers in the 1800s, Burke and Wheels, that couldn't do that. It's pretty much where the story stops. So Burke and Wheels EV, their goal, what they want to achieve, they want to achieve market leadership in the EV industry. When? By the end of fiscal year 24. Why? To establish BWEV as premier choice among consumers and a dominant player in the market. So what are we achieving? Market leadership. When? By the end of 24. Why? Because their opportunity to win against competitors. And this is a business level goal. The outcomes, which is really where we start to intersplice metrics or KPIs, is to say, well, if we want to achieve this goal, then here's 5 outcomes that we can track that will prove that we're market leaders. And we're going to do that through sales revenue, increase sales revenue to 500 mil, market share, capture a market share of 20%, net promoter score, which is a measure of advocacy, attain a net promoter score of 70 or above, which would be market leading, employee churn. So this is demonstrating we're a place of or an employer of choice. So reduce churn to below 5%, and achieve an EBITDA, which would be a market leading EBITDA of 25% or higher. So as an example, the outcome, the metrics are established to go, cool, if we achieve these 5 things, then we will have achieved market leadership. Now, sitting behind that could be a whole bunch of tasks: product development, marketing and sales, customer experience, people and culture, employee engagement, operating efficiency, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important. They are very important. But in reality, what matters most? When this business comes together and there's 6, 8, 10, 12 leaders sitting around a boardroom table and says, do we know where we're going and do we know what success looks like? The goal and the outcomes define that. Now, side note, these tasks, given that I'm using a goal that's at the high exec level, may well turn into goals and outcomes in teams around them. That's okay. That's okay. And that does come back to performance architecture and how you design the goals and the outcomes across the team, which will be a topic for another webinar. But if you're interested in that now, go to Waymaker Academy, waymaker.io/academy, search for the performance architecture badge or course, dive in there. That will take you into the detail on that. Here are some best practice tips. And you may want to use these with yourself or with your teams. Number 1, turn your role description, business plan, or strat plan into one goal each. Now, you may or may not be able to achieve that. The purpose of that exercise is to be brutally simple, to take the complex down into something that's super clear and highly valuable. I'm running out of time, but I will tell one quick story on this because this one of my favorites. This idea of brutal simplicity in what matters most is best illustrated through a US military story where post World War One, the instructions or the battle plans were highly ineffective and were causing a huge amount of human loss, life loss. Because in the culture of that day, it was very much a top-down command and control. We've all seen the Blackadder episodes or similar, where it's at 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, we're going over the top, out of the trenches and into the field. The reality was that the conditions at Thursday 3 p.m. may not actually be optimized to jump up out of the trench and charge across the field. In fact, it might be entirely stupid to do that. And And because of that command and control top-down approach, the reality of the true outcome was lost. People followed the plans that were handed down on paper over time and executed. Due to this massive loss of human life, what was added to those plans was this thing called the commander's intent. And the commander's intent was where the commander wrote what mattered most. For example, achieve market leadership. And the steps or the actions or the success metrics became less important. And in fact, the equipping and empowering went down the line to say, hey, you know what? If the plans or the battle instructions conflict with the best way of achieving the commander's intent, then come up with a new set of battle instructions. And so the commander's intent on a set of military plans or instructions became what we would call a goal name today. It's kind of the most important thing. The most important thing is not how to do it, but what to achieve. And what that did is it equipped and empowered people further down the line to say, hey, you know, you've asked me to achieve this. It might be deliver a website, launch a new product, whatever it might be. That's what matters. Now, exactly how I get there, that might change over time. And with consultation, we'll align and agree those metrics or outcomes as we work through that. So number one, turn your role description, business plan, strategic plan into one goal. Find the commander's intent on your role description, your business plan, and your strat plan. Number two, keep numbers out of the goal title. Now, you might be like, oh, that's different. I haven't heard that before. Why? Keep your what's inspirational but concrete. So achieve market leadership is a better goal title than achieve 500 million in sales. Why? Because in your pursuit of achieving market leadership, you may well just surprise yourself and you might do 600 million. So sometimes when we put a fixed number in a goal title, it loses some inspiration at times and it can actually hold back performance. We want that metric in the outcomes, not in the goal title. 3, use verbs in outcomes. Verbs are doing words. They turn outcomes into actions. Deliver, win, secure, capture, grow. Verbs in outcomes, and then verbs with a metric, you have action-oriented outcomes. And 4, apply the 1/12 rule to milestones. What's the 1/12 rule? I think this was a promise on our webinar. When you're building an outcome and you're designing your tracking and performance, you want to know early on if you're going to be successful, if we're trending in the right way. And the 1/12 rule is really simple. A waypoint, which is really a milestone on an outcome, so a formal check-in, should be tracked every 1/12 of the time it takes to deliver. So if you've got a quarterly outcome, that means weekly, so 12 weeks, once a week. If you've got an annual outcome, that means formal check-in monthly. And if you've got a 3-year strategic outcome, well, that means quarterly. Now, this helps you achieve a few things. One, it helps you achieve a focus on what matters most at the right time. There's no point checking in weekly on 3-year strategic outcomes. Now, I'll put a caveat on this. If you've got an outcome that's going south rapidly or it's in a bit of chaos, then it may require, in fact, it does require a heightened sense of focus. So in that situation, what you're doing is problem and chaos resolution, focus in on that and get that waypoint or that milestone, that metric trending in the right direction. Then you can fall back to regular check-ins. Okay, here's a swipe file, by the way. We'll make sure we send this deck to everybody on the call and that's registered. So if you want to use a written-based guide to building out a goal, use this. Okay, how can we design a culture of high performance? And I'm going to bring us home over the last 4 or 5 slides now to wrap us up. And if there's any questions, then please ask. So real quick, how do we design a culture of high performance? Well, think about goals as gears. I love this idea. Goals are gears. So our podcast is called Leadership Talk. Gears build torque, and that is leverage, power, energy. So the right goals at the right level of the organization are like the gears of the organization. They help you build the system to set, align, update, calibrate, and identify real-time progress. So goals as gears. Think about, goals sort of further down the organization at the front line, kind of high-speed goals. They're going to be very high torque, I think is the right term to say there. So high velocity. Goals towards the top of the organization, as you get further up to business plan, strat plan level, they're going to be very low torque. I think I've got my analogy right, i.e. first, second gear in a car. I love four-wheel driving, getting out and about, and when I throw my four-wheel drive onto the sand and get moving, you want to be in low gears, first, second gear. You want to be using your gears to get through the terrain. And I think it was Jeff Bezos that made this quote. Executives are paid enormous amounts of money to make a very small amount of decisions incredibly well. So if you think about that, what he's really saying is he's kind of talking about goals as gears. Executives ought to be making a very small number of decisions very, very well. At the front line, at the checkout, you want to be making lots and lots of decisions, but they're going to have a lower impact on the overall. So when we think about that, we want to build an operating architecture before we jump into the technology. So that operating rhythm should look something like this, depending on your organization, market, and context. But this is about feedback loops for your gears. So at the leadership level, yearly, you want to kind of have planning long-term goals and diagnosing where you want to improve. Quarterly, you want to kind of check in on that and adapt. Monthly, you'd want to be, as a leadership team, reporting and aligning on those annual goals. Fortnightly, you'll want leader and team member on one-on-ones. And on the off week, you want your team coming together to talk about roadblocks and a broader structure. So at a leadership level, you want an operating structure that's driving goals. At a team leadership or a functional or department leadership level, you want to be sitting underneath that. And as a team, you want to be sitting underneath that right down to your daily, weekly stand-ups. And this doesn't have to be overly complicated, but it should look something like this: yearly, quarterly, monthly, fortnightly, weekly, daily. Again, daily, high velocity, low impact decision making. Yearly, very low velocity and high impact decision making. Okay. What does it mean to lead goal performance in your organization? This is rubber hitting the road as we begin to wrap this up. Number one, you own your own goals and outcomes. Number two, you ensure your team have clear goals and outcomes. Number three, you meet regularly as a team to share progress and identify roadblocks. Number four, you meet regularly in a one-on-one context to coach your direct reports. And number five, you own the accountability framework. What does that mean? Let me explain that one really quickly. If we go back to that example for BWEV, Pete, who was the CEO, he owned the goal and those outcomes. He wasn't necessarily doing all of those. But as he delegates down new goals and outcomes, he's going to delegate accountability and responsibility so that, for example, his head of sales is going to be accountable back to the CEO for the delivery of 500 million in revenue and responsible for the execution of what it takes to get that done. So in an organization, it's always important to understand the accountability responsibility framework, because when Pete as CEO delegates the accountability, is he abdicating responsibility? No. because Pete is still responsible to the board for the 500 million in revenue. So that changes Pete's mindset. Pete, as CEO, then says to head of revenue, what do you need? How can I help you? Because I'm now delegating to you accountability and responsibility. So my posture now shifts. It shifts from I have to do it all myself to I have to help you achieve. And so leaders, when they delegate outcomes, when they delegate and create goals and outcomes for their team, shift their posture from I must do it all myself to how can I now best serve you and help you? Because I'm still accountable to my boss for what you're doing for me. And you, as the owner of that new delegation, are accountable back to that boss. So the accountability responsibility framework cascades down like links in a chain throughout an organization. It means that we flip organizations on their heads. And if we've delegated an outcome to somebody else, then we exist to help that other person win. Not you personally, but them. So leading goal performance, and we'll do a whole session on that at some point. Leading goal performance, own your own. Ensure your team have clear goals and outcomes. 3, meet regularly as a team. 4, meet regularly as one-on-one. And 5, be accountable and responsible. And if you do that, you'll actually do what Dr. Matthews articulated in terms of achieving high performance. Okay. What have we talked about? Well, we started with a problem. Poor performance is unmet expectations. Here's what we need to do. The solution is high performance is empowered expectations. Unclear expectations, set clear goals. Lack of goal owner buy-in, engage with your team. Too many goals are worked on, simplify your role descriptions, your strat plan, your business plan, down to the few. Infrequent discussions about goals, lead goal reviews. The goal set is not representative of real work. Go back to your role descriptions. Make sure the work, what you're hiring somebody to do, has real outcomes. And there's no skill or agreed system in how to set a goal. Well, hey, join Waymaker. Okay. I want to thank you for the webinar. If you want to jump in, and I'm not going to do it now, but I'm more than happy to do one-on-ones with people at different times, or you can do it yourself. You can take this deck, you can jump into Waymaker, build out that goal and outcome, and use our AI or use our tools to rapidly build a goal with a set of outcomes. But some next steps that we would recommend. 1, jump into our academy. Search goals, search performance architecture, search role descriptions. It's going to start to help you build the right culture. Number 2, if you're interested in our product and platform and want to go deeper, just book a call. Number 3, if you just want to get started, then you got the whole bang lot for free for 30 days. Now, I want to thank you for joining our webinar. I want to pause for a moment, see if there's any questions or hands raised, and I'll quickly answer those. And as I'm doing that, I'm just looking to see if there are any questions. Okay, I can see there's a whole bunch of I can see that there are no questions. I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to thank you for your time in joining the webinar. I'm going to make sure that this recording gets out to each of you, and also with this slide deck. And so I want to wish you the very best. And really, my call to you is to be a Waymaker. Simply impart these skills and these systems into yourself and your team and see your performance improve. Thank you.